Hey everyone, and welcome back today. Well, we're going deep. Diving into something that might sound a little unsettling, the world of online investigations.
Yeah.
Get this. You could actually find out a lot about almost anyone online just using information that's publicly available.
Yeah.
Seriously, we've got a stack of sources for this deep dive. Videos from tech experts, ethical hackers, even a cybersecurity company.
Yeah.
And you will be amazed by what they uncover.
You know, it's not about some super secret hacking technique. It's more like putting together a puzzle using digital breadcrumbs that people leave all over the internet. It's called OSINT, Open Source Intelligence.
OSINT. It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It kind of is, but it's also something that's used every day by all sorts of people. Journalists digging into stories, law enforcement tracking down criminals, even businesses doing competitor research.
So it's not just for poker, like finding out where your high school crush lives now.
Well, it could be used for that, but it's much more powerful than that. Imagine piecing together someone's life story, their relationships, their habits, their movements, just from bits of information they've shared online.
Okay, that's where it starts to get a little creepy.
Yeah.
But before we go full-on conspiracy theory, let's break down how OSINT actually works. One of the sources, the sub-channel, actually walked through an investigation they did on one of their own team members, Emily. They managed to find all sorts of stuff about her social media profiles, where she lives, even her dentist.
It's a really good example of how seemingly harmless information, when pieced together, can paint a very detailed picture of someone's life. And they did it all using publicly available information.
Oh, so walk me through this. How do you even begin an OSINT investigation? What are the tools and techniques?
Well, one of the simplest techniques is a good old-fashioned username search. You wouldn't believe how many people use the same username across multiple platforms. There are tools like Sherlock and checkusernames.com that can scan hundreds of websites for a specific username.
So if I use the same username for my Instagram and Twitter, someone could potentially find both accounts, even if I haven't linked them publicly.
Exactly. And once they have those accounts, they can start digging into your posts, your followers, the people you interact with, all of which can reveal a lot about you.
That's making me rethink my username choices right now. What else is in this OSINT toolkit?
Well, there's something called Google dorking. It sounds a little funny, but it's actually a very powerful technique.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Essentially, it's using advanced search operators to find information that's not easily accessible through a regular Google search. For instance, let's say you wanted to find files of a specific type on a website. You could use a Google Dork to search for things like PDFs or spreadsheets that are publicly accessible.
So you're basically speaking Google's language, but in a way that unlocks hidden doors on the internet.
Exactly. And it can be used for all sorts of things. Finding hidden directories on websites, uncovering sensitive documents that were accidentally made public, even finding exposed webcams.
Okay. That is both fascinating and slightly terrifying. Google dorking definitely sounds like something I need to learn more about. What other techniques did they use in the Emily investigation?
Well, they also use something called facial recognition. You've probably seen how this technology is used by law enforcement, but did you know there are also publicly available tools that anyone can use?
Wait, really? Like I could upload a picture of someone and find out who they are?
Pretty much. Websites like PyMize and PyMize allow you to upload a photo and then search for matches across the internet. It's a little scary how easy it is.
And how accurate are these tools? Like what if the photo is old? Or the person looks different now?
They're surprisingly accurate. These tools can account for things like aging, different hairstyles, even facial hair. In the SumSub video, they showed how a photo of Emily taken years ago was still easily identifiable using one of these tools.
So it's not just usernames and Google searches that can give you away. Even a random photo can be a gold mine of information.
Exactly. And it's not just the photo itself, it's the data that's embedded within the image file.
Data embedded in a photo. What do you mean?
It's called EXIF data. It's information that's automatically added to the image file. When you take a picture with a digital camera or a phone, things like the date and time the photo was taken, the location where it was taken, even the camera model, all of that is stored in the EXIF data.
So even if you're careful about what you post online, your photos could be revealing more than you realize.
Absolutely. In the Emily investigation, they were able to use the EXIF data from one of her photos to pinpoint the exact location in London where it was taken. All they had to do was look at the background of the photo and do a little digging.
Wow, that's incredible. And a little bit creepy. So we've got usernames, Google dorking, facial recognition,
Hey,
DARCH, and EXIF data. All of this just from photos and usernames. I'm starting to feel like I need to go into digital hiding.
Well, before you do that, let's talk about a couple more techniques. Email addresses and phone numbers.
Those seem pretty basic. What kind of information can you get from those?
You'd be surprised. There are a ton of online tools that specialize in analyzing emails and phone numbers. They can link them to social media accounts, online activity, even physical locations.
Okay, so basically any piece of information you leave online can be used to track you down. It's like a giant digital spider web.
That's a good analogy. And
Yeah.
like a spider web. It's all connected. That's where the real power of OSINT comes in, connecting the dots between these seemingly unrelated pieces of information.
So how do you go from a username to a Google Dork, to a photo, to an email address, and somehow end up with a complete picture of someone's life? It seems almost impossible.
It's a bit like solving a puzzle. You start with a few pieces, and you gradually fill in the gaps. In the case of Emily, they started with her Telegram username. That led them to a Facebook comment she made, which then led them to a review she left for her dentist.
Hey, a dentist review.
Yep. In the review, she mentioned her hometown. From there, they were able to find her dad's Facebook profile, which revealed even more connections. It's kind of amazing how these small, seemingly insignificant details can create a chain reaction of information.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So these OSINT investigators are basically digital detectives piecing together clues from all over the internet, and they don't even need access to any secret databases, just the information that we all leave out in the open every day.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even touched on things like data visualization tools, which can map out all of these connections and help investigators see the bigger picture.
I think I need a minute to process all of this. So far, this deep dive has been fascinating and terrifying in equal measure.
I know, it's a lot to take in, but knowledge is power.
Mm.
Right. Now that you're aware of these techniques, you can start thinking about how to protect your own online privacy.
That's a great point. We'll definitely have to talk about that in the next part of this deep dive.
We'll be back after a short break to discuss some practical tips for staying safe in a world where everyone seems to be an open book. Stay tuned.
All right. I'm back.
Yeah.
And still slightly reeling from that last segment. I'm guessing you are too. It's a lot to think about, how easily someone could piece together your life story
Yeah.
just from what's floating around online. But I guess the big question now is, what can we actually do about it?
Well, the good news is awareness is the first step. Now that you know about these techniques, you can start thinking about how to protect your online privacy. It's not about going completely off the grid. It's about making smarter choices and being mindful of what you share.
Yeah? Okay. That makes sense.
Mhm.
So let's get practical. What are some things we can do right now to make ourselves a little less findable?
One of the easiest things is to use different usernames for different platforms. We talked about how those username search tools can connect the dots between your accounts. So this makes it harder for someone to track you across the internet.
So instead of being coffee lover 123 everywhere, I should mix it up a bit.
Exactly. And think about the information you're revealing in those usernames. Maybe coffee level 123 isn't so bad.
Right.
But if your username is John Smith 1990 and you use it everywhere, you're basically handing someone your name and birth year on a silver platter.
Yikes. That's a good point.
Yeah.
What about all the personal details we tend to share on social media?
Yeah.
Birthdays, hometowns, even those quizzes that tell you what kind of cheese you are?
Mm.
Are those harmless? Or are we just feeding the OSINT beast?
Well, it's all about thinking about the bigger picture. One detail on its own might not seem like much, but when you combine it with other pieces of information, it can become very revealing. So it's a good idea to be mindful of what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with.
I guess that means being more careful
Yeah.
about those fun quizzes and personality tests, too. You might be giving away more than you realize.
Right. And it's not just about what you post, it's also about who you're connected to. Remember how in the Emily investigation, they found her dad's Facebook profile, and that opened up a whole new avenue of information.
Yeah. It was like a domino effect. So I guess we need to think about our friends and family's privacy, too.
Yeah.
Not just our own.
Exactly. You might be comfortable sharing your location, but is your grandma okay with that information being out there? It's something to consider.
Speaking of locations, you mentioned earlier that photos can reveal where they were taken. Is there anything we can do to prevent that?
Absolutely. Most smartphones have a setting that allows you to turn off geolocation tagging for your photos. That way the EXIF data won't include your location. And there are also tools that can strip out the EXIF data altogether before you share a photo online.
So basically, we need to be more aware of what our devices are doing in the background and make sure we're in control of the information they're sharing.
Exactly. It's about being an informed user. And speaking of being informed,
Sorry.
let's talk about email addresses.
Oh, yeah. Emails. We touched on that briefly earlier. What are some good practices for keeping our email safe?
Well, one tip that I found really interesting was from the MyCode video. They recommended using Proton Mail's simple login feature. It allows you to create temporary email addresses for online registrations.
Temporary email addresses, so like a burner phone, but for email.
Exactly. That way, if a website gets hacked or sells your data, it's not your main email address that's compromised, and you can easily delete those temporary addresses when you're done with them.
That's just a smart idea. It's like putting up a firewall between your real identity and all those websites that demand your email address for everything.
Exactly. And it's also a great way to reduce spam.
So we've got different usernames, being careful about personal details, checking our photo settings, and using temporary email addresses. Anything else we should add to our privacy toolkit?
Well, there's one more thing that I think is really important. It's about being proactive. There's a website called haveibeenpnnutty.com. It's a great resource for checking if your email address has been involved in a data breach.
A data breach. Isn't that just something that happens to big companies?
Unfortunately, data breaches are more common than you think. And they can affect anyone. Individuals, small businesses, even government agencies. Have You Been Pwned will tell you. If your email address was part of any known data breaches, if it was, you'll need to change your password for any accounts that use that email address.
Okay. That's good to know. I'm definitely adding Have You Been Pwned to my bookmarks right now.
It's a good habit to get into, checking it regularly, just to make sure your information is safe.
So it sounds like protecting our online privacy is an ongoing process, not just a one-time thing.
Absolutely. It's about being aware, making informed choices, and taking steps to protect yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually quite empowering. It's not about living in fear of the internet. It's about understanding the risks and taking control of our own digital lives.
Exactly. And the more you know, the better equipped you are to navigate the digital world safely and confidently.
Okay. So we've talked about the tools and techniques of OSINT, and we've covered some practical tips for protecting our online privacy. But I think there's a bigger conversation to be had here, right? It's not just about knowing how to use these techniques or how to avoid being found. It's about the implications of all of this for society as a whole.
Yeah, I think you're right. The internet has created this incredible network of information and connection, but it's also created a world of unprecedented transparency. Everything we do online leaves a trace, and those traces can be followed.
It's almost like we're living in a glass house where anyone can peek in and see what we're up to. And while that might be fine for some things, it also raises a lot of questions about privacy, security, and even freedom of expression.
You know, one of the things that struck me while looking at these sources was how easily online actions can be taken out of context. A joke between friends could be misconstrued. An offhand comment could come back to haunt you years later. It's like the internet has a perfect memory, and it doesn't always forgive and forget.
That's a really good point. And it's not just about individuals. Think about businesses, governments, organizations. They're all leaving digital footprints, too. And that information can be used for all sorts of purposes.
Exactly. We've already talked about how OSINT is used by law enforcement and journalists, but it can also be used by activists, researchers, even marketers. It's a powerful tool that can be used for good or for bad.
Yeah. It feels like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's incredible that we have access to so much information. It can be used to expose wrongdoing, to hold people accountable, to connect with others in meaningful ways. But on the other hand, it's a bit unsettling to think that everything we do online is being tracked and analyzed, potentially without our knowledge or consent.
One of the sources, the infographic show, talked about how law enforcement agencies are using OSINT to track down criminals on the dark web. They use techniques like undercover operations and honey traps to lure suspects into revealing themselves.
Honey traps. That sounds intense.
It is. It basically involves creating a fake online persona to gain the trust of a suspect and then gathering evidence against them. It's a controversial tactic, but it's one that's becoming increasingly common as crime moves online.
Yeah. It makes you wonder where we draw the line. What's considered acceptable when it comes to online investigations? And who gets to decide?
That's a question that society is still grappling with. There's a fine line between legitimate investigation and online stalking, and as these OSINT techniques become more accessible, that line is becoming increasingly blurred.
The MyCode video talked about how the arrest of a dark web drug dealer led to the exposure of all his clients, including people who were just buying small amounts for personal use.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even if you're not doing anything illegal, your online activity can still be swept up in a larger investigation, and once that information is out there, it's very difficult to control how it's used.
It all boils down to this. The internet has created this incredible network of information, but it's also created this sense of constant surveillance. We're all leaving digital footprints everywhere we go, and those footprints can be followed.
I think the key takeaway here is that we need to be more aware of our digital footprint and the potential consequences of our online actions. We need to think carefully about what we share, who we share it with, and how that information might be used.
It's not about being paranoid or hiding from the world. It's about being informed and making conscious choices about how we want to present ourselves online.
You got it. The internet has become an extension of ourselves. It's where we connect with friends, share our thoughts and ideas, build communities, and explore our interests. But it's important to remember that it's also a public space.
Right.
And anything we do online can potentially have real-world consequences.
So what's the solution? Do we all need to become digital hermits and retreat from online life?
I don't think that's the answer. The internet is an incredibly powerful tool, and it's here to stay. I think the challenge is to find a way to balance the benefits of connectivity with the need for privacy and security.
Right. It's a challenge that will continue to evolve as technology advances and the lines between our online and offline lives become increasingly blurred.
Absolutely. But if we can start having these conversations now, and if we can start making more informed choices about how we use technology, then I think we have a chance to create a digital world that is both safe and empowering.
Well said. I think that's a great place to leave it. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the technical details of OSINT to the ethical and societal implications of living in an increasingly transparent world. Hopefully you're walking away from this episode with a better understanding of the power of online information, both for good and for bad.
And hopefully, you're feeling empowered to take control of your own digital footprint and make choices that protect your privacy and security.
So remember, the internet never truly forgets. Be mindful of your digital footprint. Stay curious. And until next time, happy surfing.